So Bernie Sanders dropped some truth bombs on MSNBC about the build-up to war with Iran. Let's watch.
Iran is now threatening to break out of the nuclear deal for the first time after complying for 14 months, according to international inspectors, even though the president withdrew from it. So we see these hits on the tankers. They say there's intelligence. At least the Brits agree with the U.S. that this was Iranian-based or Iranian-proxied. You know, there could be an accidental war. What do you do if you're the commander-in-chief, Bernie Sanders? You're President Sanders. What do you do right now where Iran is arguably acting aggressively, even if it's in reaction to the U.S. policymaking?
Well, first of all, just a couple of points, Andrea. First of all, what is absolutely necessary is an objective investigation as to these incidents. The destruction or the bombing or the attacking of oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman is not acceptable, and we need to investigate it. Second of all,
you don't accept what the Secretary, let me just ask, you don't accept the declaration from the Secretary of State?
No, I don't. I mean, there needs to be an objective investigation. As you know, the Japanese in fact, the owner of the tanker that was attacked disagrees with Trump. But here's the main point that I want to make. If you look at the recent history of this country, I think we understand that the two worst foreign policy disasters were based on lies that came from the White House. You remember the so-called Gulf of Tonkin incident that led us to increase military involvement in Vietnam. And man, I could speak, that was my generation. 59,000 brave young men never came home from that war, and tens of thousands of more died, committed suicide, got into drugs when they came home. That was based on a lie. And then you look more recently at the war in Iraq, which I vigorously opposed because I did not believe Cheney, and I did not believe John Bolton, and I did not believe the Bush administration. Again, based on a lie that Saddam Hussein in Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Let me just say this. I will do everything that I personally can as a United States Senator to stop the United States attacking Iran. If we go into a war with Iran, this will be an asymmetrical war which will go on and on and on. There will be never-ending wars in the Middle East. It'll make the war in Iraq look like a cakewalk. So we have got to do everything we can to bring the antagonist, Saudi Arabia, which is a brutal dictatorship, together with Iran. Bring them together, use the power of the United States to work out a diplomatic solution, not a military solution.
Call them out. Call them out. Call them out. Listen, compare this answer to what Nancy Pelosi said. Nancy Pelosi, like we discussed previously, it was all, process hand-wringing. Mr. President, if you want to go to war with Iran, you better please talk to Congress first, but make no mistake, Iran is very, very bad. That's the resistance. That's how you're going to resist. That weak bullshit that immediately buys into the premise of the right. That's what you're going to do? Now, what does Bernie say? He goes, listen, history shows the White House has lied before. Am I just going to take Donald Trump's word for it and Mike Pompeo and John Bolton's word for it? Have you heard of the war in Iraq and how we got lied into that war? Have you heard about the Gulf of Tonkin? The idea that we must trust these bloodthirsty neocon chicken hawk war hawks. Chicken shit war hawks. We must trust them because they're so trustworthy. The media just buys into whatever the fuck the Pentagon says, whatever the White House says when it comes to foreign policy issues. And it's like, well, wait a second. You guys are calling bullshit on stuff they say in other areas all the time. How many times have you tracked Trump's lies? And now all of a sudden, it's like, well, they must be telling the truth about Iran. What? Why? How? Where the fuck did you get that from? Listen, man, when people learn the history of this stuff, they go, oh, I didn't know that. Like, for example, the 1953 coup in Iran. So Iran elected Democratic leader, his name's Mohammad Mossadegh, and he wanted to take Iranian oil and give it to the people. Give the proceeds of the oil to the people. Nationalize the oil industry to help the people of Iran, because it's their oil. The West said, and this is the US and the UK, they go, we think not. So what did we do? We did a CIA coup, overthrew his government, and then put into place the Shah, who was a dictator. And the Shah, of course, kept giving us that cheap oil when, again, Mohammed Mossadegh wanted to nationalize the oil industry and give let the people benefit from it. So we did that. The CIA did that. Now, we know this because it's been declassified years and years and years later. It was suspected for a long time, but it's been proven because they admitted it years and years and years later was released. Now, we're supposed to believe the same government that violently overthrew that government, Iran. Now, we're definitely telling the truth and we don't have ulterior motives. Oh, please. I mean, come on, man. What a surprise. The two governments that we care most about and that we're most focused on in terms of they're terrible dictators. It's Iran and Venezuela. What do those two nations have that maybe other dictators don't have? And oh, that's right, oil. By the way, this isn't speculation. John Bolton went on Fox Business and he said it. He's like, oh yeah, it'd be great if we could get our hands on that oil in Venezuela. He just admitted it. Why? Because he's surrounded by friends on Fox Business. He knows they're not going to challenge him. He knows that they agree to the fundamental premise of American empire is awesome and we get to control everything and we get to jack natural resources and we'll do it under the guise of we're the world police and we mean well, so it's okay. So, I mean, this is who we're dealing with here. So for, the MSNBC host, Andrea Mitchell, to be like, Iran's seemingly aggressive. Really? Iran's seemingly aggressive. Well, what about the fact that we violated the Iran nuclear deal? What about that? What about the fact then we pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal? What about that? What about the fact we slapped illegal sanctions on them that the International Criminal Court said, hey, that's illegal and you can't do that because we even blocked medicine from going into Iran and people died as a result? How about the fact that we tried to force their oil exports to zero, imploding the economy and forcing regime change? How about that? Does none of that count as aggression to you? Does flying a drone in their airspace not count as aggression? Okay, flip the script. What if Iran randomly started flying a drone they had in Florida? Like what? No big deal. Whatever. There's an Iranian drone over Tampa. Well, who the fuck cares? Is that what we would say, or would we shoot it down and say this was fucking defensive, you dipshits? What do you think? What do you think we would do? Huh? Think about this shit for just a little bit. Credit to Bernie for finally saying it when seemingly nobody else is saying it. Although I'm sure Rokan and Tulsi Gabbard would say it, and Ilhan Omar. But the White House has lied time and time and time again to get us into wars. So now when they say something, to just accept it as gospel is beyond stupid. They lie all the time. Gulf of Tonkin, Bay of Pigs, Saddam Hussein did 9/11, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction, so on and so forth. Let's not forget that, and let's resist like we should resist. No war with Iran.